Welcome everybody to the April Business Works, which is a virtual Business Works. You know, last month when we did this, and we did it in March, we had Sweet Dreams Mattress and Furniture, and we had the room packed and a lot of folks there. And I don't think anybody envisioned that 30 days later we were going to be doing this virtually, but we got a virtual program today. This is a Business Works Lunch and Learn. I don't know how many of our Zoom participants have your lunch, but I have mine from Jimmy John's, a Lake Norman Chamber member, and I encourage everyone watching this, please go out. Lake Norman Chamber restaurants, for dinner and for lunch. We got a list of them on our website at lakenormanchamber.org. Today's program is on the CARES Act. We've got a lot of phone calls into the Chamber of Commerce, emails into the Chamber about the two acts that we have up, the Families First and the CARES Act. How's that impacting our businesses? How businesses can get these loans? Dale Gillmore, who is our business growth chair, is going to walk us through the CARES Act today. He's from Quest. And Dale, I'm going to turn this program over to you.
Okay, guys. I'm going to share my screen so you can see our PowerPoint, but I'm not going to flip it like a normal PowerPoint just because I think I won't see your pretty faces if I do that. So I've done that differently before. So let me start by finding my PowerPoint here. Sorry about all the windows that are open. Actually, let me get out of here for a second. Save this. Probably should have practiced this with you first, Rhonda. There it is. All right, we're live. So obviously, you guys have heard a lot about this. Last Friday, Bill had Jay Lessman presented on similar topic. Things are always evolving from day to day with regard to this act and this loan process. Before we jump in, I just want to clarify that there's a lot of confusion between two different types of loans. So on the SBA website, there's the Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan that anyone can apply for right now on SBA.gov, and that wouldn't go through your bank. So just making sure that you're aware of that now, and that's for that loan specifically is for disaster relief associated with the COVID virus and how it's associated with your business.
Yes, it did work.
Hey guys, can we go on mute and save for Q&A at the end? I'm hearing some feedback from others. Anyhow, so this, what I'm going to present on is the payroll protection program, which is part of the CARES Act that we have to apply directly with banks for, just to be clear on the two different types of loans. Okay. So we also sent the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's guidance on this out to everyone. Some of this will be similar, some will be a little different because I'll have some practical application of things from a local standpoint. But who's eligible? Businesses and 501c3 nonprofits with less than 500 employees. Sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed businesses that are individuals. And then other unique circumstances, if you're restaurants or franchises, some of those rules are tossed out, which are more favorable to you. But you can refer to that document that we sent. What goes into this loan calculation has been a question that everybody has had, and there's been a lot of different takes on the answer. Here is specifically the law. The term payroll costs means the sum of payments of any compensation with respect to employees. That is a salary, wage, commission, or similar compensation, payment of cash tip or equivalent, payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, and allowance for dismissal or separation. If I stop there, that's likely to be what's in compensation on your W-2, right? So I might say to you that this payroll costs will mean whatever will make it into your either Medicare wages in box 5 of your W-2, or your W-3, which is kind of a number that you can potentially use for 2019 if that's your measurement period. If I then go to the next one, payment required for provisions of group healthcare benefits, including insurance premiums. Lots of people have asked, dental, vision, any corporate paid for, company paid for group plan around healthcare and group benefits will count. Payment of any retirement benefit. Again, this would be a corporate retirement plan, a 401k, an IRA, simple IRA, a SEP plan, 403b, cash balance plan, whatever plan you have that's a retirement plan that the company has, those payments would also qualify. Payment of state or local tax assessed on the compensation of employees. That, for us, that would likely be, unless people have other people out of state, that would likely be our North Carolina unemployment tax that we're paying on our employees. For other people out of state, they might be the other state's unemployment tax. The other part that it includes is, this is specific for the self-employed individuals, as there's been guidance that has said that we're not allowed to use 1099 contractors in our calculation if we're companies. But for self-employed individuals, the sum of payments of any compensation or income that is a wage, commission, income, net earnings from self-employment or similar compensation, that is an amount that's not greater than $100,000 in 1 year as prorated for the covered period. I would just say that what that really means to me is the most you're going to be able to include in your number as a self-employed individual would be $100,000 in your calculation. So we'll keep going. The max loan calculation is 2.5 times the average last 12 months payroll costs. The banks, and we've been processing these and helping people apply for these, the banks are accepting December 31, 2019 as a full 12-month period. And they're accepting the last reasonable amount of 12 months that you have gathered. So we've been also submitting April 1st of 2019 through March 31st of 2020 for those calculations. And then obviously special rules for seasonal businesses and businesses that have not been in business for that long, which would just change your average monthly payroll costs calculation. For example, I had talked to someone today that just started their business effective January 1st. And for those groups, they're going to use January and February as their average. Self-employed individuals, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. Again, that goes back to your compensation, and you're not going to be able to use more than $100,000 in that math with regard to your compensation. So this probably goes without saying, but if you are a corporation, you can already apply. So hurry up and apply. If you're an individual, you're technically not, guidance has said you're not allowed to apply till April 10th. I don't know what banks are doing because we haven't processed an individual. So I don't have good practical feedback for an individual sole proprietor or independent contractor yet on that. If you are a corporation, all the banks are accepting them. The live practical experience tells me use your existing bank. All banks are focused on their customers primarily right now. we've been able to get folks that didn't have access to two banks, but in the minute that access changes. I would say the other thing is if you have a bank loan, that's going to be super helpful for you. I'm not going to pick on Bank of America, but I'm going to pick on Bank of America for a second. I apologize if there's anybody out there from Bank of America. They're not accepting customers that don't have loans with them to process their PPP. Wells Fargo, from what I understand, it ran out of their cap yesterday. So there's some banks that still haven't processed anything. I have a customer that's at Chase Bank we're still waiting for them to process their loan. So it's there's concern that we are going to run out of money. I think Congress is probably working on something, but I can't imagine it's going to move very fast with the word Congress in it. And anyhow, so it's really important that you contact your banker like pronto, even if you're not ready to submit. I just think that'd be my generic advice to you. Some banks will accept new customers. None of the banks want to say that. So you may have to do some arm twisting and asking them to help you out. I've also noticed that there's some small banks that are out there that are kind of quiet, that also have these programs. Dogwood State Bank I saw has a little program. Some of the what do you call it? Not the bank. The credit unions have these programs. So don't assume your bank doesn't have it. Ask them first, and then ask them if they will process it without you having a loan with them. And then also ask them how soon will you get your PLP number from the bank, which that means that number is, I think, the number that basically says the SBA has recorded you and reserved the funds for your bank, for your loan. It's important to have these many details: driver's license info, tax ID number, likely the original filing of that tax ID number. Some people can't find that, and that's been an issue for us. And any of the company formation data, so bylaws and articles of organization and ownership data. Typically greater than 20% owners all have to have their individual data to support these. The max loan calculation, which we kind of generically just walk through, and the data supporting that calculation, people are asking for that. W-3s, W-2s, support for retirement, unemployment taxes, and health insurance costs for those applicable periods that you're applying for. And then proof of payroll as of February 15th, 2020, which is a requirement that you actually had payroll during that period of time to apply for these loans for corporations. Eligible use of proceeds. So there's a box on the application. It's 4 boxes basically that are going to use it for payroll, rents, mortgages, and utilities. We've been checking all 4 boxes and maybe even a 5th box to say other allowable uses for the other box. But the eligible use of proceeds, the SBA has released guidance. They want 75% of that to go towards payroll. And for rents and mortgages, those need to have been in place as of February 15th, 2020. So if you have a lease agreement, go grab it because it'll be important that you have it. The banks aren't requesting that right now. Some of them are saying hang on to it for later. Some of them are asking for it now. So it's been different from bank to bank on that. The SBA is not requiring any of this stuff right now. These are things that they'll want to know that you're basically attesting to when you make the application that you're going to use the proceeds for these things. So the loan forgiveness calculation. So it's important to know that, if you're getting an average payroll cost calculation of 2.5 months, which is, call it 10.5 weeks or 11 weeks, that you're already working backwards on your forgiveness number. So if payroll were the same and all you had was payroll, you got a loan for 10.5 to 11 weeks, and you only had 8 weeks of payroll to pay, you're probably going to have a net loan in the end with the bank, potentially. If you have rents and interest and utilities, potentially you could get that loan nearly fully forgiven.
Yes.
So that's just a general thing to say. But that loan forgiveness calculation is going to be over the 8 weeks, and there's a couple things to point out. The forgiveness period starts when you receive the cash. That was a clarification we just received like 2 days ago, because it used to be the origination date, but then they started realizing that they were going to be able to originate the loans, but the cash might not come as fast. So now you have 8 weeks from the time you receive the cash. The other point is that the loans are going to be forgiven based upon what was incurred and paid during that 8-week period. So what that means is if you just kind of paid, you can't just pay 5 months of rent in 8 weeks and get that to qualify. That incurred means probably during that period. So we kind of are saying, look, it makes sense you can get 2 months of rent into that 8-week period. Other people that are considering like what your loan forgiveness calculation is and how to max that, there's a lot of discussions about when people hire people back. For those that have laid people off, there's a lot of discussions about retention bonuses to make sure people are still with them, to be able to pay them more during the 8-week period to use the loan proceeds to get fully forgiven. A lot of people have discussed hire back bonuses to max the forgiveness in our work. And then on the rent side, don't forget other rents. It's not just your mortgage. If you got storage fees or server hosting fees, those are going to qualify as well. Interest on mortgages, you're not going to get interest on a business. Just like if you bought your business partner out 2 years ago, that interest doesn't appear that it's going to qualify. So just to be clear on that. And then utilities, electric, gas, water, transportation, telephone, internet, cell phones. The definition of transportation is a question we've been asked 100 times. Hopefully they'll clarify that definition for us, because it kind of appears that it's sort of group transportation. It doesn't look like you can just get mileage and things like that, but I don't know that yet. I can't say that with certainty. So pay attention to some of the clarifications the SBA keeps coming out with. This part doesn't matter until you get your money. The most important thing to do is after you get off here, if you haven't applied yet, go apply. There are some reductions to loan forgiveness. For those folks that are being paid over $100,000 a year, you can only really take and get forgiven about $15,385 in that eight-week period for someone. That's kind of the max compensation. I will also say that there's other associations and law firms that are not counting anything but W-2 comp in this threshold. There are others that are counting retirement benefits and health insurance to get to the $100,000, therefore excluding a fair amount of health insurance and retirement benefits. That's going to be, potentially a bank by bank and advisor by advisor discussion. Our firm, and this is not, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Lake Norman Chamber because I just want to be clear, I don't want to get Bill in trouble. Our firm is looking at this at more of, to keep it simple, it's $100,000 of W-2 comp, and then anything else above that, that's unemployment tax or health insurance or retirement, we are counting that in our max loan calculations, and we're anticipating counting that in our loan forgiveness until somebody tells us we can't. And I haven't really seen that yet. And there's a lot of folks that are interpreting rules differently. So I'll just say that. I don't want to say I'm right, and I don't want to say I'm wrong. The potential reduction for the 8-week period, that's important to also know. So the first one, compensation greater than 100 is always going to be reduced. That's never going to be counted. The second one, there's going to be a loophole that potentially could get us out of these reductions. That's why I say potential. But there's a reduction called the full-time equivalence reduction, which basically is saying if I had a full-time employees as of call it February 15th for a second of say 12, but then during my 8-week period, I only had 6. Well, I'm going to have to take a 50% reduction in my payroll costs amount that I'm getting forgiven as just simple math. And that's important for a lot of folks that have laid people off. And also important to know that you don't get that forgiveness. That said, you're still looking at a 1% loan over 2 years. So your alternative isn't awful if you don't get it fully forgiven. Reduction in salaries, forgiveness reduction. That's also if you reduce comp. So your total comp, if it's greater than 25% on average by employee, there'll be a dollar for dollar adjustment. A dollar for dollar over 25% adjustment in reduction there. So that rule exists. And then the last one that kind of gets you out of both of those rules, if you can get your full-time equivalents back and your salary reductions back by June 30th, and if that was applicable on June 29th, you can throw those last 2 reductions out. So this is sort of a way to kind of, the government wants everybody to set their mind on June 30th as a make sure everybody's hired back by June 30th goal. I think part of the list law is trying to drive the incentive to hire people back and be in full function by June 30th. So that's the quick presentation. I wanted to kind of get through it quickly, and then we can go back to any of these for specific questions. As I know everybody may have their own questions, and I want to be careful not to say anything bad about banks, but I'll take any bank questions you have too, that I can give you answers to who's been successful in getting these loans approved. Does anybody have any questions out there? Has everybody applied at this point? Hold on, I got one.
There's a message from Vince Weingartner. Do you see that? How do you see the loan forgiveness related to full time? Do you see that under chat?
Yep, I see it. Yep, got it. Great. How do you see the loan? The question is, how do you see the loan forgiveness related to full time to part time, back to full time after crisis? How fast do we have to get the payroll back to pre-crisis, June 30th? How does the part-time unemployment benefits paid by the state affect forgiveness? Okay. So with regard to, I will say I'm going to work backwards, Vince. Some of the payroll tax credits that are available to you, some of those payroll tax credits aren't going to count as credits if you have access to this loan forgiveness. So I can send that. I'll send that to you, Bill, and you can maybe post that for everyone later. How do you see loan forgiveness related to full-time to part-time, back to full-time? So I'm going to try to answer that. So what we've seen and what we've had different conversations with different owners, but some owners that have people completely cut back, were making decisions whether or not to furlough, and then making decisions whether or not to hire people back. Well, the math would say for a business owner, typically the later that you hire back and the later that you receive the funds, the better if your people are not doing anything or having anything to do. So that said, in a perfect world, if you got the funds, say June 1st, and then your 8-week period started and you got back to full-time by June 30th, a lot of people can get the max forgiveness if they could just wave the magic wand and time their money. The world's not perfect. So what's happening is we're telling everybody to apply as fast as possible. And so there's a lot of people that are sort of deciding that they're going to bring everybody back to full-time. And then once they get everybody back to full-time, they're going to make a different business decision after they get through the 8-week period, which they'll max their loan forgiveness perhaps, and people get paid very well or back to normal over that 8-week period. But it doesn't mean that they may not have to look at the business decisions after that 8-week period. There's some that are sort of saying that, look, if I just hold off on bringing everybody back, as long as I'm going to stay at my payroll plan, which maybe it's 65% of total pay, and then I'm planning to bring everybody back 100% by June 29th, and I will just deal with some of the loan forgiveness being lost, but then I won't lose everyone, because I'll have hired everybody back by June 30. So, but by nature, if you're paying people at 65% over 8 weeks, that's going to be lower than the loan that's been provided to you. That's about a 10.5 to 11 week loan. So it'll just be a little bit less forgiveness. So folks are looking at it that way. I don't know if that answered your question, that first question or not, Vince. Feel free to ask a follow-up question. And then, how fast do we have to get the payroll back up to pre-crisis? June 29th would be the generic rule to get rid of the 2 reductions in loan forgiveness, but you'll still have a natural reduction in loan forgiveness if you're not deploying the cash on forgivable items because you don't have the payroll active to deploy it to. I don't know if that made sense or not. Let's see, what else we got? Yes, so Amy Bernstein. Yeah, if you completed the application last night, get all of that stuff directly to your bank pronto. I would call your banker, can ask them if they're running this program. Some of these banks aren't. I haven't ran into a Lake Norman bank yet that's not running this program, so I'm not sure I'm familiar with any Lake Norman banks that aren't running this program right now.
We've got questions from Julie Hester and Jennifer Plummer. Did you see those?
Yep, moving my way down here. Julie Hester, we have an employee who's currently deployed in the Middle East. Did we count him as an employee? He was included in payroll for half the year in 19. So the answer to that is the first off, U.S. citizens and U.S. employees count. If this is a U.S. citizen that is deployed in the Middle East and he's on your payroll currently, I think the answer is yes. But Julie, I'm going to get you a better answer than I think after this call. I know that foreign employees do not count. And foreign being defined as folks that are not probably processed through a W-2 in the U.S. I have a question. Jennifer Plummer's question. I have a full-time salary employees and part-time employees. All of my part-time employees are paid based on fee for service. Do they qualify to be paid during this time? They will qualify to be paid during this time, the question, that's more of a business decision on whether they want to pay people to do not anything, or if a lot of people are focused on this is a time to tweak your processes and things inside the business that aren't perfect, that haven't been perfect. And my example is my wife just cleaned out our garage for the first time in 5 years this week. You know, it's the time that employees that can do the things that clean out the back office, maybe not the back office, that's probably a bad example for those that are at home, but, you know, clean out the files, that the old files, or purge them, or the data, or find all of those projects that you know need to get done, and maybe consider doing those would be my generic answer. Dan Houston, not clear about sole proprietor or independent contractor wage and income. Also, if all wage earners are contractors like marketing and virtual support staff. All right, Dan. So that's the $1 million question I was waiting for somebody to ask. So if I'm following the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's sheet that they provided us, which I want to try to follow that first because that's an easy way to think about it. They're saying companies that are corporations and businesses are businesses, but with regard to sole proprietors and independent contractors, they're suggesting that this is an individual, right? So an individual would be then probably someone that's processing via a single member LLC filed on their C Corp return, a Schedule C on their personal tax return. That's probably what we're talking about here. So if you're filing an 1120S or an 1120 C Corporation, or even a 1065 tax return, this is probably not you. We're talking about the Schedule C filer. And so the Schedule C filer, then this is where there's gonna have to be a lot of clarity, in my opinion. So we could, if you read the rules, it says 1099 compensation or independent contractor compensation not to exceed $100,000. If you look at what that file is that I think we sent out to everyone from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, it suggests self-employment, net self-employment income, which might suggest that you're going to have to reduce that by expenses before you arrive at your income number that you might use to apply for the loan. I don't know what banks are doing right now in the minute about this. I do feel like, for me, my opinion is that you should just grab your 1099s and use those and get to $100,000 and just go request that from your bank. That's the easiest thing to do. It'll be the quickest answer. And if the SBA wants to come back and double check all the expenses you had and apply it against that, then I don't know. That might be a Quest answer, not a Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce answer. But my suggestion is the banks are going to police that, and they probably don't have the answer to this question yet either, because we're still answering questions that we're figuring out this week. I don't know if anybody, so this has happened this week to us. We've got someone that has an S Corp tax return who wasn't paying himself a wage, and had 1099 compensation because they had contracts. All of those folks with the 1099s have to go apply for themselves, and that S Corp person wasn't allowed to use those payments as payroll, and they didn't pay themselves. And right now, there's nothing that addresses a way for them to apply, which is really sad to me, because I just don't know that that's right. Those that want to try to use 1099s and apply, again, don't be afraid to try, but the banks will probably not let it go, and the SBA may not let it go. So a question here: can you discuss the economic injury disaster loan? What does it take to apply, and what are the terms? Do you know anyone that is actively engaged with the SBA beyond completion of the website application? So I'll talk about the answer. The first one, I got that answer. The second one is probably going to be, I don't know of anyone that has gotten even the advance on it, which is the $10,000. So the economic injury disaster loan is in fact a loan. It's not forgivable. It's on the SBA website. It's not going through the banks. Go to sba.gov to apply. It is actually a pretty simple application. It basically requires revenue, cost of goods sold, and operating expenses from your company, and some other pertinent details to your business. The funds are for disaster. The way I've understood it to be is that the SBA is going to interview you at some point to understand what your harm has been from the coronavirus, and they'll make a decision on how much loan to offer you. That loan is going to be no more than, I think, 4%, maybe 4.25% or 3.75. I can't remember exactly. I don't have it in front of me. Something like that, and potentially up to a 30-year loan period. So again, another not bad answer. If folks need capital, I would suggest they go apply. However, the second question, do you know anyone that is actively engaged with the SBA beyond the completion of the website application? I know several people that have applied for this, and I don't know anyone that got anything yet. So, in fact, I know people that have gotten money for their PPP already, believe it or not very many. And I was surprised that happened before these advances, because the reason why they did these advances was they were going to try to get $10,000 in everybody's hand, and that's just not happened. So somebody asked, I completed the application from our bank and they asked for owner's social security number, had planned to show only last 4 digits. Is that okay? I don't think so. I think you're going to have to give them a file that supports where the social security number came from. So I've used tax documents. I've used, K-1s. I've used W-2s. I think the answer is you got to go find something with your social security number on it that supports your social security number. I like this group chat question thing. This is good. But we're running out. You guys have any more for me?
Welcome to the new technology.
I'm going to go ahead and say some good things about some banks because I feel like they deserve it. It's really crazy right now what they're dealing with. Aquesta Bank is working their butts off, and they're probably not taking applications from folks that aren't customers anymore. But man, they're kind of one of the few champions. They actually had loans processed Friday before a lot of the big banks, and anyway, I think we should celebrate them. FNB and Richard Pappas is our chair, and they're working their butts off for customers, and we're working with them. And I'm sure I'm going to be missing some banks. I think all the bankers deserve, some appreciation. I'm a CPA by background, and I like to let them know that now they're learning about what tax season's really like for the CPAs, because they're basically becoming CPAs in this. And in fact, if you really think about it, a lot of this is tax specific and really tax driven. And while your CPAs are buried with extensions and tax returns, appreciate them more too, because they're buried, especially if you're asking them questions about this, it's like their second tax season on top of their first tax season. Fortunately, our firm is only focused on this, and I'm not dealing with anybody's tax season. But all of these people are really flooded. I will say that banks are getting multiple applications from people. So if you get accepted at one of your banks, but applied at multiple banks, do the right thing and reach out to those other banks pronto and let them know you're accepted somewhere else so they can drop your file, pick up somebody else's. Anyway, but some of that is Dale specific, not Lake Norman Chamber specific. So sorry, Bill.
Dale, before you wrap up, you've got a Make an Impact Foundation. Do you want to share anything about what your foundation is doing?
Yeah, so Deborah and Tina, who work for us at the foundation, are partnering with a ton of groups including Bright Blessings and Ada Jenkins and a ton of groups just cracking down access to food. We have a little Amazon account that's out there that you can go on the Amazon wish list for us. And basically that's just food that's going to, you can do that with Ada Jenkins and all these other groups. That's just food that's getting to the food banks for kids. You know, we've got some projects we're working on. Unfortunately, you know, one of them is actually active and going to get done, but it's not, we're going to do a community celebration on it quite later. We're building a playground at the Huntington Green neighborhood in Huntersville in partnership with Huntersville, Clean Juice, the Joey Logano Foundation, the police department, and Caterpillar Ministries there. I'm probably forgetting somebody, Artisan Signs and Graphics. I'm certain I'm forgetting other people that are involved with that project. The playground is actually under construction now, and it may be even built. But we don't, the grand opening, we'll have a date for that sort of after the fact once we get through all of this. And, you know, other things that we're focused on really, I would say just stay focused on getting electronics and Wi-Fi and the access of kids and families and getting food out to those kids would be maybe my biggest concern right now in the minute.
Dale, we want to thank you for the time you put in today's program. Remind everybody that this has been recorded and we're going to place this onto our website and send out to our social media later on today. Tomorrow, we've got a program. We've got 14 area nonprofits, everybody from the Ada Jenkins Center that Dale just mentioned to the United Way, and we're going to discuss what are their needs coming up as an organization and how our members and businesses and local individuals can help. And then the last thing, on Thursday, we've got a program that we have Dan Houston. He's a John Maxwell trainer and business coach. He's going to be talking about leading through crisis. And we got information that we sent out yesterday, but we'll do so again today about signing up for that program. That's going to be a 4-part mastermind program. So again, a lot of great things going on in the Chamber of Commerce. We're trying to make sure that we're assisting our businesses and keeping you informed. And Dale, again, thank you, Quest, and you and your staff for everything that you've done today to put this program together.
Hey, Bill, there's 2 last questions. I just want to try to answer them quick, just in case. The interest rates in the SBA loans, if it's not forgiven, that is a set rate. It's 1% for whatever's not forgiven for 2 years. So it's a short-term loan for 2 years at 1%. And the payments are deferred, I think, for 6 months after the forgiveness period, I believe. I might be wrong on that. The SBA is approving $1 billion an hour of PPP funding. How long will this last? Well, there's $349 billion allocated to this, and we don't know. And when will it be too late? I would say, don't ask that question. Just get applied and see what happens. You know, what I don't know is going to happen. April 10th, they're supposed to open this up to self-employed individuals. And I don't know if they've bifurcated some money for that second, you know, off of the 349 and have a second pool for companies versus self-employed individuals or not. I hope they do. I would just say, hurry up. That's all I can really tell you. Thanks, guys. Signing off here, Rhonda.